Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that Denmark's former IBF featherweight champion is set to return to action later on this year in the fall opposite the ring Argentinian legend Marcela Acuña, who to my surprise is still around and is still fighting, sporting a professional record of 53 wins with 9 losses, 2 draws,
20 knockouts, a testament to Argentinian resilience, Argentinian toughness. For those not aware, Marcela is 46 years old.
Sir Mahfoud, the former IBF champion, 12 years younger than Marcela Acuña, sports professional record of 13 wins with 1 loss, no draws,
3 knockouts. She's a crafty boxer, but not a very big puncher.
Set to go down 2 months from now in early October for what is the WBC Silver featherweight title, what can be used as a segue to challenge for the full title.
One Amanda Serrano's currently in possession of. Sarah Mahfoud has already shared the ring with Amanda Serrano and lost to Amanda Serrano. It's her lone defeat. She managed to go the distance with Amanda, though was severely outgunned and survived by moving lateral, using pivots, using shifts.
She knew she couldn't trade punches with Amanda Serrano. She knew she couldn't go toe-to-toe, blow for blow with the much bigger, more experienced puncher, experienced fighter, but she did manage to survive by moving lateral,
staying outside of the pocket and trying to stay outside of Amanda's striking distance. It didn't really work.
She was still getting touched up, losing a lopsided decision to the Puerto Rican legend, and she has since rebounded off that loss. She's currently on a 2-fight winning streak.
Sarah Mahfoud capped off the year last year with that loss to Amanda Serrano and returned to action earlier this year in March, then again in May.
Points decision wins over both Lara Acuña and Veronica Tosi. She will be facing a far more experienced fighter than either one of them in Argentina's own former champion and legend, Marcela Acuña.
Veteran of 64 professional bouts, 64 professional contests.
To Sarah Mahfoud's 14, having debuted as a professional way back there in 1997, towards the end of it in December, roughly 25 years of experience. Though when it comes to experience, at least in this situation, there is such a thing as having too much of it, too much experience. It's hard to give Marcela Acuña any kind of odds here, fighting in
Sarah Mahfoud's neck of the woods as the away fighter.
Marcela Acuña, like Sarah Mahfoud, saw action 2 times earlier this year, once back in March, then again last month in July, and she will be returning to action in October opposite the ring Sarah Mahfoud for a WBC silver title at featherweight. I think Marcela still has enough in the tank that she can make Sarah Mahfoud work for it.
But she ain't winning that fight.
Testament to Argentinian toughness, not dissimilar from what we saw in the Erica Farias versus Sandy Ryan fight, the Sandy Ryan fights. There were 2 of them.
Argentinian fighters are notoriously durable and strong.
Sarah Mahfoud, not being an artillery fighter, not being a knockout merchant, the idea that she's going to go in there with Marcela and just blast her out of there, that doesn't seem likely to me. What's likelier than not is a points decision.
Still the much, much fresher, more well-preserved fighter of the 2. Marcela Acuña, as great as she is, she's 46 years old.
Not a big believer in miracles myself. I'm a realist, and it's not realistic at all that Marcela Acuña can win a points decision in Denmark against Sarah Mahfoud.
If Sarah wins the way I'm expecting her to, that lines her up for the winner of the upcoming Erica Cruz versus Melissa Odessa fight.
Erica Cruz, the former WBA featherweight champion, is currently ranked at number 1 by way of the World Boxing Council. And this fight between Sarah and Marcela, it's for a lesser version of a WBC title. So if Sarah makes it through that fight,
lines her up for the winner of this one. We will know the outcome of Erica Cruz versus Melissa Odessa Parker before we know the outcome of Sarah's fight.
Cruz versus Parker is set to go down south of the border next month as a matchroom show by way of DAZN. That's in September. Then in October, we'll see what happens, what shakes out between Sarah and Marcela.
Got Sarah on points.
Sarah, who is amassing a solid body of work in just 14 professional bouts when you look at it, having faced Germany's own southpaw Nina Menke, Argentinia's own Brenda Carbajal, one of Amanda Serrano's current mandatory challengers.
And having shared the ring with Amanda herself, she didn't win, but she managed to go the distance.
Sharing the ring with a Puerto Rican legend, now for an Argentinian legend in Marcela Acuña, it's a solid body of work, and there is a legitimate chance that if Amanda Serrano ends up vacating all the alphabet titles titles at 126, Sarah might be able to pick one of them up, depending on who she's got to go through.
See what happens.
Men's lightweight news per Gervonta Davis's trainer, Calvin Ford. He views Pitbull Cruz as the current leading candidate, and that comes as a surprise to no one. I told you that's who they were looking at, and that's who they will likely go with. There are other more interesting fights, new blood at 135 that they could put in there with Gervonta Davis, like Frank Martin or the Dominican Republic's De Los Santos, that kid.
My thing is Pitbull Cruz. Calvin Ford told BoxingScene.com in a recent interview when asked, who's the front runner?
Isaac Cruz, otherwise known as Pitbull, gave it everything he had against Davis almost 2 years ago. On relatively short notice in December of 2021, Cruz was given the chance to hand the pound-for-pound luminary his first defeat.
What the fuck does he mean, pound-for-pound luminary? Who wrote this article?
Guy that goes by the name Hans Stemistode, who wants to gaslight us all, suggesting that Gervonta is a pound-for-pound fighter when he's had ample opportunity to prove whether he is or he isn't.
What do you think? Fighting Hector Luis Garcia and Isaac Pitbull Cruz at lightweight, that makes him a pound-for-pound fighter?
A rematch with Isaac Cruz would presumably take place in either the fall or winter months, approximately 2 years from their initial meeting in late 2021. It's been that long, and since then, Isaac has done very little in terms of significant victories, significant wins to date. All he's done...
He hasn't beaten anyone of note.
His claim to fame is going 12 rounds with Gervonta Davis. That's it. His biggest win, quote-unquote, is a loss, a glorified loss to Gervonta Davis, and that was close to 2 years ago. You've had 2 years to fight in a meaningful fight, rack up a meaningful victory, and you still haven't.
In the subsequent months that followed the Gervonta Davis fight, he had the opportunity to share the ring with Ryan Garcia, an offer made to him by Oscar De La Hoya, which they ignored.
It was estimated to being an offer in the neighborhood of $1 million. More, I think, than he made boxing Gervonta Davis as a late replacement. But alas, they didn't take up Oscar on his offer. The WBC ordered Isaac to fight Shakur Stevenson, which they also rejected.
They also ignored.
What they've been doing is placing Isaac Cruz in the ring with stumble bums and no-hopers on the undercards of their box office fights, hoping to gain his career some traction, some momentum, but not a single fight that he's had so far was talked about.
Think about it, close to 2 years to rack up a meaningful victory and not a single high-profile fight.
The lightweight division is a pretty deep division, irrespective of what side of the street you're on. On Isaac Cruz's side of the street, you've got De Los Santos, you've got Frank Martin.
Aside from Shakur Stevenson, who he didn't want to fight, and aside from Ryan Garcia, there were those guys right there on the PBC side of things, and he never found the time to fight either of them either. Neither Frank Martin or De Los Santos.
Facing Isaac Cruz could be big business for Team Davis, but that doesn't mean he's Ford's preference. The likes of Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson were more desirable options. Neither man, however, is likely to get the call. It isn't because the interest isn't there, but mostly because both Stevenson and Haney appear to have their plates full.
There goes Hans Stemistode again, gaslighting everybody. What about an Isaac Cruz rematch is quote-unquote big business?
Right now, Devin is going up. Shakur and Lomachenko probably do it next year. Now, they've been putting off a Lomachenko fight for many, many years now, and for many, many years, I told you, Gervonta Davis will never fight that guy. He doesn't have the heart.
In spite of Calvin Ford's constant empty promises, they're never gonna fight that guy.
Don't let him fool you about Devin Haney. Irrespective of Gervonta Davis's legal woes and the recent sentence that he had to serve as a result of that motor vehicle accident some years ago, his team, his management, could have got in contact with Devin Haney right after the Lomachenko fight to set up a fight in the fall between them, in either the fall or winter months, that if you really wanted to get that guy in the ring, you could have.
Why didn't they?
Because Devin is an undisputed champion. Because Devin already makes great money without you. With you, he's gonna want to make more than that.
You being Mr. fucking A-side, right? You're supposed to be some kind of cash cow. The onus to get the deal done would be on you, not him.
He's a network and promotional free agent. Thus, the onus to do the fight would be on the A-side fighter. And Gervonta Davis fancies himself the A-side to everybody at or around these weights, yet he made no attempt, neither he or his team, to get Devin in the ring so they can fight for undisputed.
All the belts in one fell swoop.
Fighting Isaac Cruz again is a much cheaper alternative, albeit a fight that no one is asking for. Nobody's asking to see a second fight between them.
But if what you're saying is that Devin Haney is too expensive for Gervonta Davis, then how did Gervonta get Ryan in the ring?
Ryan added value to the show that Devin Haney would not. Ryan has a bigger following than Devin Haney, than Shakur Stevenson, so they were willing to play ball with Ryan in a way that they're not willing to with Shakur and with Devin.
He's also more beatable than they are.
So in Ryan, what you have is a more beatable fighter than Shakur, than Devin, who also happens to add more value to the show. That's how they got him in the ring. That's why.
Now that that's done, they're back to their old tricks, back to their same old shtick. You want to fight Isaac Cruz again. Why?
Who wants to see that? Is that going to get the same reaction, the same reception that your last fight just got, the one with Ryan Garcia? Don't you want to keep the momentum going?
No.
Not fighting Isaac Cruz again. It's conceivable that a rematch with Isaac might do more buys than the first fight did, because in the first fight, he was a late replacement and nobody really knew him. So the rematch might do more buys than the first fight did, but it won't do anywhere near what the Ryan Garcia fight did.
No, those numbers are going to plummet.
You're talking about well over 1 million pay-per-view buys, back down to just north of 200,000.
It's what he normally does.
What he'll do if he decides to fight Isaac again. There is no palpable interest, no demand to see an Isaac Cruz rematch. And if they do stage it, it'll do what Gervonta Davis's fights normally do without Ryan to help him sell it.
Just north of 200,000.
After having made whatever he made with Ryan Garcia, you wonder that Gervonta Davis would even get out of bed for the kind of money that Isaac Cruz would get him. But
Safety first.
fight Isaac Cruz again, that's what you're doing. You're playing it safe.
You beat him before, you figure you can beat him again, and it don't cost you an arm and a leg to get him in the ring. You're playing it safe.
He'll do a decent gate the way he normally does, but as far as the buy rate, the pay-per-view buys, that's where they're going to take a hit. That's where they're going to suffer, which begs the question, if that's the case, why fight him again?
What are you doing a rematch for?
Because it's cheaper than fighting Devin, cheaper than fighting Shakur, certainly safer.
And it's in-house.
Finally, in reference to this fall's upcoming super middleweight contest, Battle of the Unbeatens between Demetrius Andrade and David Benavidez, Canelo is torn, saying it's a good fight, it's a 50-50 fight.
So it shouldn't be.
Do you know why it shouldn't be?
Why?
It shouldn't be a 50-50 fight, because if David Benavidez were every inch the monster that he's made out to be, it wouldn't be so tough to call.
Shouldn't be a 50-50 fight, because if Demetrius is as good as he's made out to be, then he'd be the clear favorite. He's the two-division champion, the crafty southpaw.
The real reason it's a 50-50 fight is because neither one of these two guys have done anything that sets them apart from their contemporaries. Demetrius has no signature wins at 154, at 160, at 168, and while David Benavidez does, won over Caleb Plant, he waited until Canelo knocked him out before he fought him.
He couldn't knock him out like Canelo did.
The last thing Canelo Alvarez wants to do is look past the somewhat smaller Charlo, but he can't help but fantasize about how Benavidez versus Andrade will play out.
More gaslighting from Hans Themistode. Somebody should ask him, in what way is Jermel smaller than Canelo? He's taller than he is, has more reach than he does, walks around the same weight he does.
Jermel Charlo is not smaller than Canelo Alvarez. What Jermel is a guy who cuts more weight than Canelo.
That doesn't make him smaller.
He's literally taller and just as, if not heavier, than Canelo. But Hans Themistode...
When did boxing scene start letting Haymanites write for them?
Hans continued, when recently asked to stick to his guns and make a decision, Alvarez thought long and hard before shrugging his shoulders and giving his answer. That's a really good fight, Alvarez told Boxing Scene. 50-50.
And like I said, it's a 50-50 fight because in spite of Demetrius Andrade having campaigned at 3 weights and been a champion in 2, 36 years old, he's literally older than Canelo. He has no signature wins. In all the years he's been a boxer, he never did anything to set himself apart.
With David, he's got a signature win over Caleb Plant, but you don't want to go shouting it from the rooftops. It's not the kind of win you blow out of proportion, because Canelo got his hands on that guy first, and when he did, he knocked him out. You couldn't, over a year later. David actually has the right base style for the job, but he is a rather crude pressure guy. He's a crude pressure fighter. Pressure fighters have a tactical advantage over pure boxers like Demetrius Andrade, like Caleb Plant, because pure boxers want to fight at a controlled pace, a slow pace, only 1 and 2 punches at a time. They don't really want to have to mix it up that much in the pocket, whereas pressure guys, that's what they do, that's who they are, and that's what David is.
He's a pressure fighter, albeit a crude one, because even amongst pressure fighters, there are levels, there are tiers.
What a high-level pressure fighter looks like is more akin to an Artur Beterbiev or a Roman Gonzalez.
Chin tuck, fighting at a slight crouch, bending at the waist, bending at the knees, slipping, rolling, bobbing, and weaving mid-range to inside to get off punches.
Slip and counter, roll and counter, keeping the guy under constant pressure, but not just with your hands, with your feet as well, whereas David Benavidez's methodology is a lot more crude, a lot more simple. He just marches forward in that high guard, throwing those wide college frat boy punches, and he'll do that for a while until the other guy gets tired.
That's what's worked for him. That David Benavidez has got a good set of lungs. He's got good cardio, whereas Caleb
characteristically gets off to a decent start, but fades down the stretch, even in fights that he wins, let alone fights that he loses. And the same is true of Demetrius Andrade, who, in spite of being an unbeaten fighter, the same is true for him. He'll get off to a good start, even score a knockdown early. But as the fight progresses, he starts to slow down. He starts to lose form.
Him and Caleb are both pure boxers, but there are differences. Caleb tries to be a little bit more smooth in his approach, whereas Demetrius is more herky-jerky.
As well as Caleb being an orthodox fighter leading with his left, whereas Demetrius, he's a southpaw that leads with his right.
That's important.
It's relevant because I've no recollection of David Benavidez ever sharing the ring with a southpaw. I wonder if that's going to bother him.
Much experience does he have fighting lefties?
I know he hasn't fought one in recent memory. Could the angle of attack throw David Benavidez off his game? You have to consider that a part of what makes this a 50-50 fight is he was just in there earlier this year with Caleb Plant, who characteristically gets tired as a fight progresses. And for the last 4 or 5 rounds, Caleb was exhausted, but David couldn't finish him.
The guy was spent. He was wiped.
Smaller man, a much smaller man was able to stop Caleb Plant, but David Benavidez couldn't. So who says he stops Demetrius Andrade? He's never been stopped.
For all David Benavidez's height and length and size and youth, he was not able to stop a so obviously exhausted Caleb Plant. So who says he goes in there and runs over Demetrius?
Not that I'm a big fan of Demetrius, because I'm not, but evaluating this fight, while David Benavidez may have the right base style for the job,
Still very crude, still very simple.
basic. There's room in there for Demetrius Andrade to make him look human. In spite of Demetrius being the older fighter at a stylistic disadvantage, there's room in there. I'd say there's room even for Demetrius to upset him if David's not careful and sharper with his offense. Both guys have seen action this year.
Nobody's got any ring rust that they need to shake off.
As stated, it's an intriguing fight.